Sure. So my name's Arcia Guiña, and I'm a former teacher. I taught high school science when I was in the classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, ma'am. This is Nandini, an 8th grader from G.P.H. School, Ilavaram. Sir, shall I ask my question?
Yes,
Sure.
yes.
Here, my question is: the Texas flag looks extremely similar to the Chilean flag. Could you please tell us something about it?
Sure. So I did kind of have to look it up a little bit because I forgot what the colors meant, but I know all the colors on the Texas flag mean something different. Red symbolizes bravery, blue symbolizes loyalty, and white symbolizes purity. And I think it was a little bit funny that, the designs for both flags were created pretty close to each other. I think it was like 22 years apart. I think the Chileans made their flag first, and then 22 years later, Texas came up with a similar design.
Okay, thank you. Jaishnavi Likita, over to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
My name is Jaishna Likta, a 6th grader. I would like to ask one question, ma'am.
Sure, go ahead.
What is Texas famous for?
Oh man, Texas is famous for a whole load of different things. Barbecue is one, food, just anything big. They always say everything big is in Texas. So, big parks, big houses, everything's bigger in Texas.
Thank you. So, Subramanian Srinivas.
Sir. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
How are you, ma'am?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm fine, ma'am. This is Subramanian Srinivas, a 7th grade student. Here my question is, could you please tell us about your current job?
So right now, I work in private industry. So I work for a technology company called Glowforge. It's a 3D laser company. And a lot of small businesses use us to create, a load of different materials. So our laser works on wood, on plastic, metals, pretty much, anything that you can engrave on. So people personalize gifts and give them to people. Let's see, I wonder if I can share my screen because it's a little, oh no, it's the screen sharing is disabled.
You can do it. You can do it. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay.
No problem.
So let me try to share my screen again, just so you can kind of get an idea. There we go. So this is our website. So you can see she's working on her computer. This is what the laser actually looks like. And now we're getting into schools too. So here you can see some designs that people have made. You made the sign. You can make jewelry, art, maps, with any kind of material. It's really great. And now we're in schools and we have kids, making prototypes. Because a lot of the time when you're in school and you're learning how to code and things like that and prototype, it's all in theory, right? So I can learn how to code a video game, and in theory it should work. Online the prototyping machine or the simulation is telling me that it should work. But with Glowforge, you can actually build out a video game remote and wire it together and use your code in real life. So that's kind of what I do now. Is I help students.
Yes.
How do you incorporate technology in your science classroom?
So when I was a science teacher, all of my students had a laptop. So that made it a lot easier. When I first started teaching, my students didn't have laptops. We had, I think, computer labs and things like that we could, save time on if we wanted to go into the computer lab with our students. But once my students got a laptop, it was great. They would do things like the prototyping, and we would use Tinkercad to make 3D objects and all that kind of good stuff. My students had MacBooks, so they would make videos and podcasts and those types of things, which is really funny because I was a high school chemistry teacher, and you don't think about podcast making in science, but yeah, absolutely. My kids would make podcasts, they would make videos, they would make posters online, anything to kind of get a real world feeling of how this works in real life.
Okay, thank you. And
Yes, sir. Hi, ma'am. How are you?
Good, good.
My name is Farina. I'm a student. I'm from G.P.H.S. Ilavaram. Here, my question is: what is your process for ensuring students comprehend your lessons?
So I feel like students learn in all types of different ways. Some are very visual learners. Some are, they learn through reading materials and step by steps. So my kind of process for that was I would figure out, this particular student does really well if I show visuals, and this particular student does really well with, literature. So my way was I was try to offer different options, I would give them a general concept that I wanted them to learn. And I would say, you can watch this video, or you can listen to this podcast, or you can read these PowerPoint slides to get the information. But by the end of your video, PowerPoint podcast, I need you to understand these 7 concepts, give me some examples, and, write in your own words what you think they mean. So I think giving a lot of options to students is a way to kind of connect with them and make sure that they understand.
My name is Jagdish. I am studying 8th grade at Z.P.H.S school, Ilavaram. Can I ask you a question, ma'am?
Absolutely.
How is food like in Texas?
Food, it varies in Texas. Texas is so big. So kind of, in the middle of Texas, you have a lot of really great barbecue. If you go, south in Texas, they call it Tex-Mex. So it's a little bit of American and Mexican food combined. I live closer to the Mexican border. So our food is completely different than the food in the middle of Texas. So ours is very much more, Hispanic and Mexican. As I move further into Texas, sometimes I'll order the same thing that I would order here where I live, and it's completely different. I'm expecting it to taste a certain way, and then I eat it like in southern Texas, and it's interesting, because people from all over the world move to Texas and they add in their own flavors. So it varies, but for the most part, it's all pretty good.
so we heard that Texas is the second largest states, one of the largest states in United States of America, and it is as big as Germany and some other European countries.
Yeah, well, I always say Texas is bigger than France, which is absolutely true. So if I start driving west, I hit California before I hit Houston.
Okay, Sahiti, over to you.
Hello, ma'am. This is Sahiti. I'm an 8th grader. Here, my question is: why did you decide to become a science teacher?
So in college, I was a biology major, and I actually I was a research student. And I believe, well, it all started in high school. In high school, I had a really great science teacher. He was my AP physics teacher. His name was Mr. Bungie, and I still remember him. He was adorable. And, he always made learning really, really fun. We'd make these trebuchets and launch things into the air. And it was just so much fun. That's where I kind of got the liking of science. I always really liked the experiments, even with kids. That was kind of my favorite part, was always the experiments and the technology. So that's why I decided to become a science teacher.
Thank you. Megan, over to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am. My name is Meghana. I'm an 8th grader. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
How can we promote critical thinking among young minds?
I think the best way to promote critical thinking is by creating, creating a prototype, creating a video game remote, creating tools to maybe solve a problem that there isn't a tool for, just creating and inventing, being innovative to try and solve real problems is probably the best way to learn.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Bushra,
you.
over to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am. How are you, ma'am?
Good. How are you?
I am fine. My name is Bushra, an 8th grader from G.P.H.S. Ilavaram. I would like to ask a question.
Here my question is, Texas is the second most populous state in America. Could you please tell us about something about it?
You know, we have a pretty huge population, but as you're driving through Texas, it doesn't really look that way. Because you can drive for miles and miles and miles and it's just empty space. So there's still tons and tons of space in Texas, even though we do have a really high population, there's still, you know, a lot of room to grow, which is pretty amazing. That's how big Texas is. Where, you know, we have one of the highest populations, but everything is really spread out. You know, we have really rural towns where, you know, one house, your neighbor could be, I don't know, 20 miles away.
Oh,
So there's still a lot of room.
yes. So I have been to United States of America in 2022. I visited Arkansas. I think it's close to the Texas, Arkansas state.
Yes.
Yeah, I witnessed the houses, the setting of the houses. One house is far away from the another house. But whereas in India, it is absolutely crowded, and
Yes.
so the population is a crowdy population, and every street you can witness the lots of people, and as well as the houses also fully packed, and no space between one house and another house. But it's a different story in the United States of America, and here you are living even the Texas too.
Yes, you know, my sister had a friend who lived in New York, and New York is pretty compact as well.
Yes.
So I thought it was really funny when he came to visit us in Texas. He was just walking through the neighborhood, and he was amazed by. He's like, "Does everybody have a mailbox?" You know, and he's like, "Where can we walk to get food?" And I'm like, "Well, the next restaurant is like maybe half a mile away." And he was just so shocked because in New York you walk everywhere, you know, to get to places, but they're pretty close by.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting that he was so amazed.
So another interesting fact in India is that if you live, if you are isolated from the rest of the society, if you live far away from the other people, and there is a threat of the thieves, there is a threat of burglars, and there is a threat of dacoits. So because of fear of this, the people like to live close to their neighborhoods, and they like to set their houses close to the another neighbor. So probably
Yes.
this is the reason. Do you have the fear of the threats from the thieves and some other burglars?
You live.
Yes.
You know, some cities have a higher crime rate than others. I'm lucky that I live in a pretty safe area, but you know, I think people do a lot of different things to help keep with security. Like I have a huge wall around my entire house,
Okay.
so it'd be really hard to break in. You know, it's about, I don't know, 19 feet tall.
Oh,
So it's really hard to jump over. And things like that, you know, to kind of protect yourself. So it's a little bit harder just depending on where you live. In places like, you know, maybe New York and Chicago, the crime rate is a little bit higher. So
yes.
I would expect, you know, behavior would be a little bit different.
Yes. Thank you. Mamata, over to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am. How are you, ma'am?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, ma'am. This is Mamata. I am a sixth grader. Can I ask one question, ma'am?
Absolutely.
What is the most engaging lesson you have delivered so far?
I'm trying to think. I think one of the funnest lessons that I would do with like my pre-AP students and things like that is I would have them look up an experiment that already existed, and kind of read through it and figure out what happened during this experiment and why. And then I would have them replicate the experiment, but change one variable and just one. You know, maybe you put a higher concentration of acid or, you know, a lesser concentration of acid, and then they would have to predict what would happen because I changed that one variable. And kids would really have to think about it. And sometimes their, you know, predictions were right, sometimes they were incorrect. But you know, it really got my kids thinking. It got them building. It got them doing the experiment. And I think that's one of the funnest things that they ever done. Another thing that they really liked was dissection. So we would dissect pigs because their anatomy is very similar to humans. So, we would do an autopsy report on a pig, and we would give them a situation. So maybe your pig died of blunt force trauma to the head, or maybe your pig. So they had to identify the organs and organ systems that were affected by the manner of death, and then really pull them out and things when we were dissecting. So that was another really fun, engaging thing that I would do with kids.
Okay, thank you. RC, I have a question. At the school age, what kind of animals and what kind of the creatures that you use to dissect and for the children to learn the heart and the lungs of the little creatures? What kind of animals do you use?
I've used worms, when we're doing just basic dissections. Frogs are really popular in middle school. Pigs, cats. I would use cats for human anatomy, and the kids would have to skin them, and so they could see the muscular structures and all that stuff. It kind of varies. For smaller children, they do owl pellets, so they go through the owl species and they look for bones and things like that. So a bunch of different things. But as far as like education science companies, I think those are the ones that they send the most.
Okay, so I have one more question. Here in India, only frogs are used for the dissection, and but in your country you have a different system. So how many creatures and how many animals a student on average has to dissect in an academic year?
So I know in my biology classes, we try to do, well, it just depends on time, right? Throughout the school year, we have to cover certain standards. So I usually only had time to dissect one animal, and they let me pick. Do you want a frog or do you want a pig? And I would always go for pig, just because it's bigger and the anatomy is so much closer.
Okay, thank you. Tedipya, over to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am. This is Tedipya, a 7th grader. Can I ask one question, ma'am?
Sure.
What is your teaching philosophy?
My teaching philosophy. I think what we had talked about before, everybody learns a different way, and you just got to kind of figure out how you learn. I had kiddos that had a hard time reading, or they struggled with, maybe they had dyslexia or something like that. So they preferred to listen to the chapters in the book instead of, reading it with their eyes, things like that. So I think just allowing that kind of access, and so that you can figure out how you learn. I was a horrible test taker, and I tried everything to study. I tried note cards. I tried, answering questions in the chapter of the book and things like that. And what I found that really works for me was lists. So I would make lists of the content, and then I would predict some of the questions that the professor might ask me. And that worked out for me. But I think I had the opportunity to try all of those different things to figure out what worked for me.
Okay, thank you. And to students, do you have any more questions? Raise your hands if you have. Any more questions? It looks like that everybody asked it. And RC, I have a question. And
Sure.
So what kind of job opportunities are there in your country? And if one takes science or biology or physical science as an option, and at post-graduation level or maybe at the graduation level, what kind of opportunities are there? And how the students who opt this science as a at graduation, so what kind of opportunities they look from this group?
So, man, now there's all kinds of jobs that never previously existed, right? So even my job never previously existed. We never used the lasers in classrooms before. But there's a bunch of different fields that students can get into now. Engineering science is a huge field now. Biomedical biology, if you have a bio background, you could, cure cancer someday. I'm trying to think of new things that are available, even, with 3D printing and drones now. People fly drones all the time to deliver, Amazon packages, which is wild. There's a lot of new jobs coming up in robotics. We have gigantic warehouses like Amazon, and people literally drive robots back and forth in the warehouse to get equipment. So tons and tons of stuff out there. And I think that's the biggest thing is access and opportunity and knowing about these things. Because if you don't know, you don't know. So really doing your research and having these different engaging opportunities to figure out what works for you.
So the elective system is something that is quite intriguing for me when I came to your country and to witness the education system. And I inquired and even interviewed a few students. They told me that they actually are coming to the school just for the sake of electives. They like to see the electives and for their future prospects. So like music and yes, even the agricultural science, and there are some other electives, you know that. So what do you say about this elective system, and what's the reason, the primary reason for introducing the elective system at school level in your country? Unfortunately, we don't have this elective system. And because of this reason, I think many students are remaining as dropouts after schooling and without any success. So, but in your country, it's a different story, and they are taking these electives as their professionals, and they are trying to take it as a career option, and they are growing well.
Yes. I know a lot of schools, like the district that I came from, they had tracks, is what they called them. So they would ask students in middle school and high school, you know, what do you think you want to be when you grow up? That way we can kind of tailor your classes to kind of meet that need. So, and I tell my daughter, because she panics all the time, she's in middle school and, you know, she has to pick her track. And I told her, I'm like, think about the classes you have the most fun in. I'm like, which classes are those? And I told, you know, and they could always switch. You're not, you know, if you started track and you don't like it, let's say you were on the engineering track, you think you want to be an engineer, but you're not that great at math. That's okay. They let you switch to a different track. So maybe you can try art or, you know, English language arts or something that's more befitting to you. But it's to expose students to those different classes and opportunities that they may have not previously known about.
Okay, so now I would like to ask you a question. Actually, you have already worked in a public school and where you taught the science. So I have a related question that if a female teacher is conceived, that means if she is pregnant, so what kind of leave she can avail so during her pregnancy period, and after delivery, how many days does she need to take rest before she comes back to school?
You know, it depends on the insurance that the school district offers, and how many days that you've collected. You know, because you can save your days for something like that. I know with typical maternity leave, I think it's about a month or so. And then if you have additional days that you've saved up, you can stay longer. There's other districts that offer, you know, an extension. So maybe you want to take 6 months to be with your child. And if you have that type of insurance, they'll give you partial pay. They'll pay you for maybe half your paycheck or something like that while you're out, and then you can come back in. So it just depends on the plan that the school has.
Okay. So as of now, what is the retirement age for American teachers, especially working in the public sector?
Oh man, you know, it's hard to retire on a teacher salary. I know a lot of teachers that retire, but then they go back to work. That way they get their retirement, and
Yes.
then on top of that, they have a little bit of spending money. So
Yes.
it's really all about the planning. You know, if you planned really well, you can retire at a pretty young age. And if you're not, you know, if you didn't plan well, well, then you might, you know, retire and just keep working part-time to pay the bills.
Mhm. So, what do the public school teachers in United States of America think about their future? Would they like to continue in their jobs, or would they like to leave the public sector and join the private sector? And what is the thinking going on among these public school teachers?
As a former teacher that left public school, it's really challenging right now to be a teacher. With the pandemic and the learning gaps and all that kind of stuff. And then, depending on the state, there's not a whole lot of support for teachers right now. It's really hard, to get funding. A lot of teachers, well, this is just my opinion. I feel like some of the priorities are really off, it's unfortunate that there's been a lot of, school shootings and things like that. So now a lot of that money that you get from the government goes to safety instead of learning, which is another, challenge that teachers face.
Yes, I do agree with you that behaviorism is also one of the issues that the teachers, United States of America is facing. The
Right.
behaviorism, yes. Okay, and so what would be your future thought? Maybe you would like to choose some other profession, and so do you have any thing in mind?
My career has moved several times. I was a research scientist, and then I was a teacher, and then I worked in instructional technology, and then I worked for Apple, a different tech company, and then I went back to the school district, and now I work for a different tech company. So, and it's so funny because I've been in education and technology for a long time, and I don't have a single degree in either. So I
Yes.
think, you got to find what you're interested in and what you like and what you're good at. And if you have that skill set, possibilities are endless.
Yes. So I have one more last question. So you have been in different fields as a teacher. So have you ever thought that there is one subject that needs to be implemented in public schools in the United States of America? They badly need this subject is badly needed to be introduced in the public sector. Have you ever thought about that? And if you have ever thought that, could you please tell us the subject that needs to be implemented in public schools in the United States of America?
In the US, I feel like we're a little behind on computer science and coding. A lot of people don't realize how much code goes into opening up a website. And we're becoming more and more dependent on technology. So I think it was my experience that my students were not that exposed to computer science. Again, we did do the simulations, we coded things, and in theory, it should work. But we were never able to really put it into practice. So I feel like that is something that needs to, grow, and because that's the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your valuable time. And we really learned many incredible and interesting facts about your country and your state also. So before we wind up this session, could you please give a final message to my students?
Sure. I think my final message would be lean into what you really like. If you don't like math, then don't go into, a math career. You're going to make yourself miserable. But if you really love arts, if you really love, lean into the things that you like and that you're good at. And it'll make for a happier life at the end because you're going to enjoy what you do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.